So, your kids are off to college. Yeah, so now you can stop parenting, right? Well, that is the question we will address today. And spoiler alert, the answer is no. Your job is never over. I'm your host, Jody Sweeten, and today on Awkward Conversations, we will be joined by two amazing guests who will help us address preventing misuse among college students. And of course, I am joined by the fabulous Amy McCarthy.
Hi, I'm Amy McCarthy. I'm the Director of Social Work at the Adolescent Substance Use and Addiction Program at Boston Children's Hospital. Thanks, Jody. It's great to be here, as always. Our first guest today is Dr. Allison Smith, who serves as the Assistant Commissioner for Student Health and Wellness for the Louisiana Board of Regents. Hi, Allison.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for having me. Nice to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us today. And Dr. Calvin Mackie is also joining us, an award-winning mentor, inventor, author, former engineering professor, and internationally renowned speaker who has a PhD in mechanical engineering and has founded STEM NOLA, which just in the last few years has engaged over 75,000 students, many underserved students of color, in hands-on STEM project-based learning. And besides speaking to thousands of college kids each year, he speaks to two regularly, his wonderful, talented sons who attended Yale and Howard University. Hi, Dr. Mackie.
Hi, Amy. Thank you all for having me. It's great to be here.
So one of the first things that, we want to talk about is, as kids obviously are getting older and going off to college, what are some of the primary factors that can contribute to drug misuse among college students? Because it is, for many of them, it's the first time they're out on their own. They really make their own decisions. And I know I did not make great decisions for myself my first semester of college. It was one of the first times that I actually wound up getting sober. But I'd love to hear you guys talk about what some of those primary factors are so that parents can look out for those.
I would say one is a family history. If there's a history of misuse in the family or abusive patterns of use that your student normally sees or your child normally sees growing up, and that if they see someone that's drinking all the time or using substances all the time, that they begin to normalize that. And I think on the opposite end of that, it's having no understanding of what actual standards are. What's one thing that's really different when you're in K-12, it's a zero tolerance message that all drugs are illegal, you do nothing. In college, the message switches to harm reduction because as much as we would like to tell you that we are going to rid all of our college campuses of substances, that's not the case. The first message is always abstinence. We would love for you to abstain.
Right.
But the other piece is teaching some harm reduction techniques as well.
And another thing that adds to drinking while kids are in college is just socialization, a sense of belonging. Dr. Allison Smith and myself, we are both in Louisiana. LSU right now is playing in the World Series. And one of the biggest stories coming out of Omaha is that LSU just broke the Jell-O shot record at this bar, right? So we live in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, where socialization and partying is a big part of our being. So we have to be very cognizant to make sure that our children have the self-agency to make these self-sustaining decisions when they find themselves in these environments where alcohol and other substances are pervasive. So for parents, that's very, very, that should be very important for them, when they're thinking about college and the college campus that their kid may find themselves on.
I'll add one more thing, Jody. The social and retail availability that Calvin just mentioned, that how many outlets are around college campuses, things of that. So when you sort of think about the college town, every college USA has some little conglomerate of businesses or establishments where college students go out to party. But being sure that you kind of think about how many of those are around. And just, again, the socialization piece is huge when students are trying to find themselves for a sense of belonging.
Right. And one of the things that we talk about a lot on this show, too, is that core relationship. And, it's hard when the kids move out of the house to really continue that relationship. If you can have that good connection built by the time that they go off to go be on their own and be faced with making some of those choices and be faced with, now not just zero tolerance abstinence, but how do I start going in the world and making smart and decisions for myself? One of our guests joining us today is Natalie, who is here working with us on Awkward Conversations, but is also a college student. Welcome, Natalie. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. My name is Natalie, and I am a college student. I started my first year in 2018. And I went to school in Santa Barbara, which is, a bit of a party school.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely met a lot of people who used and abused substances, and it was everywhere.
Yeah.
So I've had to make some pretty tough decisions
Yeah.
regarding drugs and alcohol, but yeah, I'm happy to be here, happy to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, what are some of the most common substances that are being misused by college students? I feel like probably alcohol is at the very top of that list just because it's the most socially acceptable, the most readily available. But what are some other things that parents and students should be, keeping an eye out for?
No matter how many new drugs of choice tend to trend at different times, alcohol by far is always literally 20, 30 points ahead of usage. Like I said, it's socially acceptable, it's widely available, it's legal in all the states. And so one of the things we see right behind that is cannabis use. Cannabis, and then for college students, typically stimulants. Things like Adderall, Vyvanse, Ritalin, those kinds of things. One, because there's this untrue misconception that it helps them study better, which there's no scientific evidence to prove otherwise that it does. But stimulants tend to be, and including cocaine as well, tend to be some of the more commonly misused among college students.
And I would, suspect that a lot of the stimulant use I know is starting even in high school with all of the pressures of getting good grades and being involved in all the extracurriculars and making sure you do all this. I know, there's a real problem with stimulant use in like 10th, 11th, 12th graders here too, because they're sort of, I've got to do all of this stuff. And again, like you talked about that misconception that this is, going to help you do better. Unless you have severe ADHD and you can't focus on something, that's not going to, it is not the answer. Now, what did you find, Natalie, for yourself?
Absolutely. I mean, alcohol is super prevalent, right? It's everywhere.
Right.
It's everywhere. We had wine Wednesday, and then you would go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
Right.
Sunday, So that was huge. But then as far as like stimulant use, I will say that I had almost the opposite experience.
Okay.
I have pretty severe ADHD, and it wasn't diagnosed until my second or third year of college. And
okay.
I had that same pressure in high school to do it all, right?
Right.
But I didn't know anyone on stimulants, not to say it doesn't happen. Of course
Right.
it does. But once I was diagnosed and once I was treated, a lot of the stuff that I was using to self-medicate, all of that fell away. It was a process, but finding what works for you and also making sure that you're talking to your doctor, talking to your psychiatrist so that it doesn't, get into like abuse.
Right.
That's really, really important.
Right.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're sharing your story with us, Natalie. I know that young people who live with ADHD have a really high comorbidity with substance use disorders, especially when it's untreated, like you're talking about. And so getting access to those things through a doctor, through a physician, is so important to, help with, not the self-medication piece. And also when you're now away from your parents and your, supports that have known you maybe since kindergarten, a lot of things kind of come out that maybe you had help with before that you weren't really sure about. And so it's a good, it's a prime time to learn those things about yourself. So I'm glad you got that support and got the help.
I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD till I was about 40, and now all of a sudden so many pieces of my life make sense. But, in college, I think there's so much pressure, and there's also, all of a sudden it's like, you're free, and here you go. Now you're an adult off in the world, and they're not. We talk about the frontal lobe is still very underdeveloped, and not, that doesn't happen until your mid-20s. So, we have quote-unquote adults out there who are definitely not in adult mind thinking. We'll be right back after this message.
Saving lives means staying informed. Knowing the dangers of using fake prescription pills can help those you care about and keep our community safe. As a parent, educator, neighbor, or friend, we all play a role in building safe and healthy futures for ourselves and our loved ones. Do your part to take the first step today. Visit GetSmartAboutDrugs.com to access education, prevention, and treatment resources. Fake prescription pills laced with fentanyl are deadly. Be their protector. Be informed. Visit GetSmartAboutDrugs.com.
Now, Dr. Mackie, we mentioned you have two sons who are in college at Yale and Howard. What are some of the things that you do to keep that relationship going and that transition from zero tolerance, to harm reduction to how to best stay connected with your kids while they're not in your house anymore?
Got it. I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I grew up in a house where alcohol was abused. My dad was a roofer, dropped out of school in 8th grade to pick cotton, didn't have skills, and became a roofer. So every summer I used to go to work with him. I used to go work with him on Saturdays and work during the summers. And I saw these men working real hard in the sun, blistering hand, and after work, I mean, everybody just wanted a cold, good drink, right? So for me coming up, alcohol was almost like a reward. And I saw the impact that it had on my dad, it had on my family. So when I became a father, I said, you know, I got to mitigate this from the beginning like it wasn't mitigated in my house, even though that I drink alcohol. So with my kids, you know, we believe in affirmations. You know, and when they was kids, I used to say, Mackie men are smart. They say, we finish what we start. I said, we get out of life. They say, well, we put into life. I said, now you have to do, you do what you have to do. They said, we can do what we want to do. So as little boys, they got that, right? And I would always believe that when you talking about communications have different components. Everybody thinks communications is just verbal, but communications is written, but communications is spiritual, but communications is also gestures. So I made it almost, you know, when my sons came home, when they walked through the door, I walked up and I hugged them. And I hugged them because I wanted to smell them, right? And I started that real young, because if I smelled something on them later on that otherwise didn't come from the house, that was a conversation we have to have.
Yep.
So still to this day, while they're in college, my son is on his way to Yale. So even now this summer, every morning I try to make it a thing to get up and hug him. When he come in at night, I hug him. I send my other son texts, and I just keep the lines of communications open to let them know that you can talk to me about anything, showing them unconditional love, to let them know that, hey, you're not validated by the world. You was validated at home. There's nothing that the world can put on you that you cannot handle, that where we will stop loving you and stop accepting you. Another thing that we did to make sure that these lines of communication stayed open, I made sure, my wife made sure that we put our kids in situations to see people who had suffered consequences of drug use and alcohol abuse. So we would go out and volunteer, we'd go out to food banks, we'd go out to homeless shelters, and we would have those conversations on our way back home about how did people end up in these situations. People just don't decide to be that in life. So we believe that we've given our two sons and their friends, because their friends spend a lot of times around us, the foundation to know the value of making a decision and the decisions before them when we're not around.
Yeah, I would imagine, you know, your kids are pretty far away from Louisiana for school. Like, I think about video chatting being one of the, you know, most helpful tools to parents when their kids are away at school. You know, instead of just being on the phone and hearing their voice, you see their face. Are they lying in bed? Do they look like maybe they're hungover? Like, you know, what do they look like? How do they sound? And like you said about the hugging, right? You kind of are like, wait, something, maybe something's off, because we're checking in pretty regularly, and I can see your dorm room, and I can see, you know, I get, you know, it lets us a little bit more into their lives than before.
And the hug at the end of the night was always key. I mean, as a teenager who I you know, it's been documented, I talk about it a lot. I got myself into a lot of trouble. I struggled with substance use issues. But I remembered that Mom would always, you know, she would always hug me, and, you know, all the perfume and everything in the world, she was like this now. But it was so important, like, I you know, even if I was making the wrong choice, I still knew that, like, my mom was going to be there to check it, you know? Like, it doesn't mean I wasn't dumb as a kid, because we don't really stop them from making stupid decisions sometimes, but they know, and I always knew, like, my mom is there. She's there, she's home, she's waiting for me, she's gonna check in, she's gonna look at me, you know?
Those bumpers you've been talking about.
Yeah, the guardrails, you know, I've talked about that, like, you can't, you're never going to make the decisions for your kid, but you just kind of are the bumper rails in the bowling alley gutter, like hoping to keep them out of that and just keep them, you know, rolling forward in the right direction.
You know, Jody made a comment. My oldest son now, he's doing an internship out in Pasadena, California. And we were on the phone the other night, and I said, man, why did you call me? Let's FaceTime, right? Because he has new friends. He's in a new dorm. I don't know where he is. He's at, you know, this college. So we start FaceTime. I'm like, show me your room. So, you know, and he was going around the room, and I'm looking for signs of everything, right? But the point was, I made it seem like I wanted to see his room. Like, what you know, show me your new room. I hadn't had a chance to visit yet.
Yeah.
So it's those type things that I want him to have the expectation that I'm going to ask, and, you know, pop-up visits or whatever. But those are the type of communicative techniques that parents have to continue to use.
I remember one of the things about, you know, the getting ready for college experience was touring different schools with, you know, my parents and my mom. And what are some of the things that parents can look for maybe when they're on a college tour, or ask? What are the questions that they can ask?
One of the things that I think that parents will have to research on their own, right? Because there are only so much that any campus will tell you. And I just believe that to be true for all institutions. But part of that is all campuses are required to complete what's called an annual security report. And that is under the legislation that derived from Jean Cleary, who was a student who lost her life at a campus. And so her parents engaged Congress to get legislation passed where you can pull up all of the arrest records and things like that for that campus and the surrounding area. One of the things that's really cool about that is inside of there, they have arrests and violations for drug and alcohol laws. So that is in there. So you can kind of see the culture piece yourself, kind of see what those numbers look like, and it spans the previous 3 years. Then another conversation I think we have to have as parents, particularly for students, if your child has aspirations to be part of a Greek organization, those students tend to be at higher risk. A lot of campuses have what they call a Greek scorecard that is available online on the campus's website. You can look with your student. I would recommend looking with them to say, what organizations are you interested in? And then you can pull up their Greek scorecard and kind of see what kind of violations that they've had. Have they been in trouble before for hazing or for excessive drinking, those kinds of things? But that way you're able to have the most information possible to make the most accurate decision that's going to contribute to the success of your student while they're away at college.
I was a college professor at Tulane University for 12 years. I went to Georgia Tech for like 8 years, and then I was at Morehouse for another 4. So I spent a lot of time on college campuses. So as a father, I'm that dude. You know, when I took my sons on campus tours, I get up at like 11 o'clock and I just go get in the car and ride around. and you know, because I want to know. I know on every campus there is a spot, right? There's the joint.
Yep.
I want to know the joint.
Right.
And when I talk to senior students, I pull them to the side and say, man, be honest with me, where's the spot? Like, what you talking about, Doc? No, where's the spot, right?
Right, yeah.
And so I know the spot in D.C. where my son would probably end up. I know the spot in New Haven where my son at Yale may end up. I want to know, what is it at homecoming? What do they do? I mean, where do they go? Where is the spot? So my point is that as parents, we got to harken back to our experience as parents and know that, hey, you know, kids going to be kids and they're going to do what they do. So we need to get as much information as possible on the university side, but also on the community side.
Now, one of the things that, you know, with social media that has really been helpful for a lot of parents is the ability to search hashtags. So hashtags of the university that, you know, you're potentially looking at, or where your kid goes to school, and see what people are saying about that.
So people who tend to work in the prevention, treatment, recovery world of higher education, that is one thing we will do to keep up with trends, especially TikTok. For some reason, students, you know, they like community. And so I think part of what Dr. Mackie said, it comes back to a sense of belonging. They create community through utilizing the hashtags. And so there was a big trend that kind of happened this summer with boards, which are blackout rage gallons. And so
she was telling me about those, and I was like, "What
yes.
is no?"
Because
no.
And that's so even in their best attempt, they were trying to do harm reduction to kind of mitigate some of the effects of it, although misplaced. But they will hashtag boards in whatever campus or whatever. And so you can look through different trending topics to find what's going on around campus, things of that sort. And then Instagram as well.
I'm going to go home and search the hashtag board because I have 15 and almost 13-year-old daughters. And I'm like, what? Oh, another thing, another weird acronym of stupid things. Okay. But I mean, was this something that, is this like, you know about this?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm old now.
I've heard of Borgs, right? Like,
I'm so old. I'm so out of touch. Okay.
But what was big when I was out there was like jungle juice, right?
That was big. Yeah, I've definitely. Yeah, it was just
Throw
pour
some gummy
gallons
bears
of
in
whatever.
there, exactly, right?
I hate to cut this conversation short, but that is all the time we have. So please tune in next week.
I think it's incumbent upon universities to train all of their staff and their faculty to look for red flags with students.
You can search on the ARHE website for colleges that have collegiate recovery programs.
I knew, these programs exist.
Right.
There's something out there. So I looked into it a little bit and I found MA, which is Marijuana Anonymous.
Make sure to check out getsmartaboutdrugs.com. Parents, caregivers, you can find so many resources of great information there about how to talk to your kids and make these conversations a little less awkward. A huge thank you to the Elks DAP, which is the largest all volunteer nationwide drug awareness program. And also a huge thanks to the DEA for their outreach program and for making this possible.
The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Awkward Conversation series are solely those of the individuals, speakers, commentators, experts, and/or hosts involved, and do not necessarily reflect nor represent those of the production, associates, or broadcaster, or any of its employees. Production is not responsible and does not verify for accuracy any of the information contained in the series available for viewing. The primary purpose of this series is to educate and inform. This series does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. This series is available for private, non-commercial use only. The production, broadcaster, or its channel cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.